Well, hi everyone. It's quite nice to be back in person again. This is it's not the first in-person talk I've given since the pandemic, but that was for a company one, so it's good to be here. And NDC holds a special place in my heart, so this is very exciting. So welcome to this talk on Zero to Document Hero, an introduction to MongoDB and .NET. What's my slide? There we go. My name's Luce Carter, and I am a developer advocate at MongoDB. I'm also a Microsoft MVP and a Twilio champion, so yeah, I kind of get a kick out of coming to give talks about stuff that I like, so it's really good to be on stage. So to kind of kick this off, let's do a little bit of kind of my history with databases. And it kind of all starts back in 2009. I did a vocational course at like sixth form college, so like not what like Americans call college, but more like sixth form college. And that's where I first started learning about relational databases and SQL using Microsoft SQL. Then in 2010, I did a software engineering degree at university, and that's where I was introduced to Oracle SQL, because obviously, you know, SQL comes in different flavors, and so I was introduced to Oracle, and we had this fat textbook that you had to go through, which kind of gave you instructions on, you know, learning SQL step by step, and as you got through it, got more complicated. But it's still very much SQL land. And then in 2015, I graduated from university, and I started life as a software development graduate at the IT firm Fujitsu. And that's where I first learned about Postgres and also SQLite.NET. But again, it was still very much SQL, and you know, whenever it was a project required a database, that was when we would still be thinking about relational databases, and that was kind of automatically where you jumped to. If you had data storage requirements, SQL tended to be where you went. And that continued into 2017, where I got a job at the BBC. And I was working as a platform engineer, and you know, so we started to do things in the cloud, and this is where I was introduced to Amazon's AWS, and this is where we used RDS, or their relational database system. So very much in the 8 years I've touched databases in that time, it was always SQL. But then in 2001, so this very year, I got a job at MongoDB as a developer advocate. And that's where I first discovered document databases. I'd heard of MongoDB and I'd heard of document databases a little bit, but you know, it was still very early in my journey and I hadn't really used them much. And you know, I found them kind of cool. And I've worked at MongoDB since the 1st of June 2021, so exactly 6 months and a day. And in that time, you know, I've gone on quite a journey. And total transparency, as I mentioned, I'd not really done much with their products before I started, which is kind of cool. You know, I got a job somewhere that I hadn't used their products much, but we'll get on to that. But it's all been great fun. And this talk is all about the journey I took, where I really had to change my mindset from relational tabular databases to document databases. And you know, as you can imagine, in 6 months, it's been quite a whirlwind. And I thought it'd make quite a good talk, and I'd share it with you. And you know, as George Bernard Shaw says, progress is impossible without change, and those who cannot change their minds cannot change anything. So, you know, it's important to, you know, open your minds to try new things, and sometimes it turns out all right. So let's just quickly go over then an agenda for what we're going to talk about on this little journey that we're going to take together. So we'll start off talking about the differences in the terms and concepts between relational databases and document databases. Then we'll learn about why document databases such as MongoDB are such a great fit for modern application development. And then we'll talk about how MongoDB and .NET work together, and how easy it is to get started in literally a few lines of code. And then finally, we'll look at some of it in action and some super cool examples, including some that may surprise you, because let's be honest, someone can stand on stage and say to you, hey, come use this product, or come use this technology, and you'd be like, maybe, it looks okay. But unless you actually see it in the real world, you know, you're not necessarily convinced that it might be for you. So let's get started then with our first one, which is tables versus documents. Well, the first question we've got to ask ourselves then is, what is a document? Well, essentially, it's a JSON object, so JavaScript object notation. Now, as you'll see later on, MongoDB actually uses a very special type of JSON object, which is BSON, or binary JSON, which introduces some extra data types beyond just the ones you get in JSON, such as dates, arrays, and objects. But a document starts off with, you know, 2 curly braces. If you've used the C language of C family of languages before, such as C#, C++, Go, PHP, JavaScript, you know, not JavaScript, JSON objects is pretty familiar to you. You've got the curly braces, and then you've got the field value pairs. You might see the fields referred to as a key, an attribute, a property, but it's all the same thing. And this is all fine in theory, but let's look at an example. So I don't know about you, but when I'm learning something new, a lot of the time I have to kind of actually try it out and work through an example. So when I started at MongoDB and I started to learn about document databases, I tried to kind of think about what kind of real-world example have I witnessed or as part of my life that I could actually kind of go through to make it make sense. So this is me at the gym. Might seem like a strange thing to share, but this is. I don't often take selfies in the gym, to be honest with you. I don't take selfies full stop, to be honest. If you look at my Instagram account, I don't post anything. But you know, this is me in the gym. But right here in the corner, which might be quite hard to see on these screens, but right here, hiding in the corner by the door in the background of that picture, is my personal trainer, Phil. Now, Phil and I have been working together, apart from the pandemic, weekly for about 4 years now. But, you know, and it was during my first week when I was trying to get my head around it, I had a session with Phil, and it got me thinking about, well, you know, how would Phil store his data and his work? You know, what would that look like in a relational database world? And what would that look like as a document database? Well, the first thing to think about, of course, is that, well, I'm a client of Phil's, so the first thing Phil's going to have is clients. And in a traditional database world, you might store that in a table called clients. So we'd have different columns for our properties. So we've got an ID, which would tend to be the column with the unique values. It would call the primary key. Then you've got things like name, number of sessions a week, and a phone number. And that's great, you know, and that's pretty simple and, you know, cool. Just one table, some information. But how would that look in a document? Well, as you'd imagine, pretty straightforward. You've got the curly braces around the outside, and then you've got these field value pairs with the fields being surrounded by double quotes. Now, you can see here our ID is called _ID. In MongoDB documents, you have this idea of an ID, but it's always called _ID, and it's a special object ID field that we'll see later on. But you have, again, it has to be, you know, it's always unique, and we have this _ID, and then the other fields that we'd expect. Cool. But then, you know, we've got these clients, but then things get more interesting because, well, you got things about a client, but that's maybe not the only information that Phil cares about. I know for me, when I started at the gym, one of the things I had was goals. I had goals of things I wanted to achieve. These are the reasons why I joined the gym, and these are actually completely genuine. Run 5 kilometers, ticked. Build muscle. Well, my deadlifting personal best is 120 kilos, so yeah, we're good for building muscle. And complete a pull-up. We're not there yet, but we'll get there. Maybe, you never know, maybe this time next year I'll be back and I can tell you that I did it. But, you know, as you can see with relational databases, even though this data is related, it's stored in separate tables because one client might have multiple goals. And so trying to represent that in one table, in the client's table, would be quite difficult. So you've got goals, and then obviously where relational databases get their name from is that tables have relationships between them. So you can see here we've got an ID column for goals, which again is a unique primary key column. But we've also got a client ID column, which maps to the client's table. So we can then say, okay, well, we've got these goals in this goals table, and they're mapped to this client. So then when you want to start using them, you then have to start doing expensive joins. But in a document database, you don't need to do that. At MongoDB, we have this saying, which I've heard multiple times, but it makes complete sense, which is, data that's accessed together should be stored together. You know, why keep it separate? You know, if you're going to be accessing it together because, you know, goals make no sense without a client attached to them, and a client, maybe they don't have goals, but let's be honest, if you're signing up to the gym, you probably do, even if you don't realize it. And so we can store things together. And this is where the power of a BSON document comes in, because we've got this array here of goals, and it's just an array of strings. So we can just say, create this array in this document that just says, for the goals, this is what they are. And you can have one goal, you can have 50 goals, it doesn't matter. It can all be stored together. So we have our clients and we have our goals. But in order to achieve a goal, you've actually got to do, well, exercise. So what happens each week is Phil will give me, have a planned out roughly an exercise plan for the day, and I get him to actually text me every week what we did. So I get an idea of what the exercise was, whether if it involved a dumbbell or a kettlebell, what the weight was. And so if this is a relational database, you might have an exercises table that would record the ID of the exercise. Again, the client ID, because it's the exercises for a specific client. The name of the exercise, but then sets and reps. Because you need to know how many times you're going to do something, but also how many times you can repeat that cycle. But we can take advantage in documents of how much easier it is. Again, data that's accessed together should be stored together. So because we've got the power of BSON, we can store an array of objects. So we can have an object for each exercise. So we've got the name of the exercise, the sets and the reps, grouped together because it makes sense. They're inside an object because a rep makes no sense without a number of sets. A name of an exercise means nothing without the number of sets and reps you've got to do, so it's stored together in an object. Nice and simple. But, of course, I'm not going to be Phil's only client. Phil is an extremely hard-working individual, and not only does he have a lot of clients, but he's just completed training as a police officer. So, he never sits still. I don't know how he does it. But, he's got other clients. And actually, I met Phil because a friend of mine introduced me to him, and her name is Chris. But Chris is a very private person, so, we can store the information in the client's table, such as, name and number of sessions she has a week, but she doesn't like sharing her phone number. Her and Phil communicate in other ways, like Instagram or email, but it doesn't store a phone number. Now, in relational databases, they try and encourage you not to have a null. And null can mean two things anyway. It can either mean, I don't have this information, or I don't know what it is yet. And so null can be quite difficult to handle. But one of the great things about document databases is that you've actually got, especially with MongoDB document databases, is that the schema is actually flexible. It's okay that Chris doesn't want to share her phone number. We just don't add that field in the document. Perfectly valid, still work, just don't include it. And that's great, nothing's going to break. If you don't want to include it, don't. If you want to add Phil, if Chris wanted to add her email address, or Phil decided to store Chris's email address, but I don't want to share mine, that's okay. Chris's document can have an email address but not a phone number, and mine can have a phone number, not an email address. And again, we can just populate this information. Again, Chris has goals and exercises as well. And the document ends up looking pretty much identical. It's just the only difference is there isn't a phone number. And like I said, that's perfectly okay. If you come from relational databases, you might be hearing, flexible schema and panicking, thinking, oh no, what's going to happen? I don't have a schema. It's okay. Don't panic. All will be okay. I promise. So let's just spend a minute doing some term mapping. So this is a table put together by my amazing colleague Lauren, and I just think it's brilliant. So I with her permission, I stole it and put it in here. So we start off with, a row is a document. So if you do relational databases, you might know already that a table has rows, and each row is essentially a record. And then in a document database, you have a document instead of a row. Columns, as we saw, maps to fields. And then a table is a collection. So you'd have, multiple rows in a table. You'd have multiple documents in a collection. Go a bit wider than that. You'd have a collection. You'd have a database which holds a collection. Same as relational databases. A database is a database. And then, don't worry so much about the rest of these, but they are pretty much the same. An index is an index, for speeding up your queries and stuff. View is a view. Instead of a join, you can do embedding. So as we saw, we had an array of objects. You could actually embed an object inside of the object without the array. So that's essentially document embedding. And that's perfectly valid. Nothing wrong with it at all. And then there's transactions. MongoDB does support transactions, but you don't really need it. So what may happen if you've ever done research into document databases, you might see no transactions listed as a drawback. It's not. It's just that you don't need them. It supports ACID transactions and stuff. Like, it is, consistent, eventually, like consistent and everything, and it has ACID. But just the way it works, you don't need to worry so much about it. But yeah, this is, a pretty high level just mapping summary to help you just see that, this is how they map together. And when I first saw this, I was like, this table is so helpful. So, well, we've talked about the differences, but why MongoDB? Well, MongoDB and document databases make life easier. Maybe subjective, but I think they make life easier. They've got high availability. So if you've ever, tried to change your schema, for example, in your database, you might recall having to maybe go to the database administrator, maybe beg them, bribe them, pressure them with management to go, hey, I want to make a change to this database. Can you take it offline? Change this, change this for me, maybe remove a column or add some columns or whatever, and then bring it back up again. So you've already got downtime, and not just your time begging the database administrator, but potentially downtime for users while you make these changes. But because the schema is flexible, it doesn't matter. Don't need to do that. You've got high availability. As I said, you've also got flexibility. Let's be honest, how many times have you started a project and nothing about it has ever changed at any point throughout the project from start to finish? Probably zero. And it's the same with data. You can, with all best intentions in the world, you can start off and go, yeah, my data's going to look like this. Then someone throws in a curveball, normally someone non-technical or someone in sales who's made a promise that's a bit difficult to keep. But that's okay. The schema with MongoDB, it's flexible. That's fine. It handles it. Nothing's going to break. There's no downtime. You just carry on. And it can also be scaled vertically. If you find that your business or whatever it is, or your project is suddenly taking off, and you've got loads and loads and loads of people coming to your website or your application, and suddenly the server's struggling a little bit, that's okay. It can be scaled vertically. Just add some extra resources, whether it's some RAM or some more hard drive space, and it will just carry on its merry way. Just keep walking, or as they say in Finding Nemo, keep on swimming. But one advantage that it has over relational databases is horizontal scaling. So rather than having to spend a fortune on extra resources, because let's be honest, parts can get quite expensive, especially once you need more and more and more. So you can scale horizontally, which means rather than having, adding more resources, you just have more of them. So MongoDB stores your data in what it calls clusters or replica sets, and you can just have multiple replica sets if you need, if one or two is not enough, have 6, have 10, have 100, whatever you need. The other great thing as well is that you can also do something called sharding, which, if you ever think of it like going to the library. You go to the library and, you see things broken up into maybe A to D and E to H and so on. And so you go in, right, okay, I need to find this book and it's going to be in this section, so I'll go there to get it. And it's the same as sharding. It will break if you've got a large data set, it will break it up into little pieces that you define to then, spread it around, whether it's like more of them or globally closer to your users. And it will just make your life easier. So it'll be much higher performance because things in your large data set have been broken down. So again, if your business takes off, that's okay. You can just scale horizontally and it'll cope with it just fine. And then we've got readability. Oh, I don't know about you, but I can't remember the amount of times I've sat in something like PG Admin or SQL Server Management Studio and gone, oh, I want to know about information from this table and that table. So, you go on, W3 schools and you look up SQL and joins and how to do the select statements. And I don't code very often, so I'm not afraid to admit I go on W3 school sometimes. But, it's difficult. And you're starting to do these fancy statements just to get some information out. But what's great about document databases is because they're just essentially JSON, they're readable. Then, so as I mentioned earlier, MongoDB uses binary JSON. So under the hood, it's stored in fancy binary that's not readable. But it's fine. It just puts it into, when you actually want to look at it, it just puts it into a JSON format for you. Nice and readable. As I mentioned, if you've done like C family of languages over time, and I'm imagining quite a few people here have done C#, it's you've seen JSON before, so it's super readable. And because again you can store data together, it's just it's all in one place, nice and easy, brilliant. So I want to talk to you now about Atlas. And no, I don't mean the map, and I don't mean the god. I believe this picture's taken from is it Rockefeller Plaza in New York? No, I want to talk to you about MongoDB Atlas. So MongoDB Atlas is our database as a service in the cloud. We even now support multi-cloud, multi-region deployments. So you can say, oh, hey, I know, I like the regions that Azure has got, but I also like the regions that AWS has got. So deploy to both. And also, pick the regions that work for where your users are at. Brilliant. And, it's free. You can even get started for free. We have M0 as a free cluster, so you can try it out and you can do whatever you need. And a lot of the time, especially if you're a hobbyist, completely free. So you can try it out and run it for free. And don't worry too much if this picture's hard to look at. We are going to go through what this is soon. It was just a this is what Atlas looks like picture. So we've got a little video here, but I'll talk you through it, don't worry. It was just, I've not been out enough in the pandemic to pray to the demo god, so I decided not to try and do this live. So this is Atlas, and this is what it looks like. So when you first go in there, it will bring up this, and you can go, hey, I want to create a free shared cluster. So it said free forever. Then you can go in and pick your provider. The multi-region stuff and multi-cloud came in slightly after I took this video, so you'll see the option to do multi-cloud. But you can, go through and see the different cloud providers. You can select one or more, and then you can pick a region. I'm based in the UK, so I picked EU West 1 or Ireland. Then, if you want, you can give your cluster a name, or you can leave it as cluster 0. You do you. Naming things is hard. If you just want to leave it as cluster 0, you carry on. But then, you've got that there, and then you can just go ahead and deploy it, and it will just say, hey, I want to go ahead and create it. So now it will just give you the screen that says your cluster is being created. Cool. Start doing the same thing twice. There we go. And then if we, one of my favorites, if this will work. Gonna work? No. Okay. Well, it's supposed to be the YouTube video for SpongeBob a few moments later, but I think it might be. Yeah, there we go. We've got to fix this. Come on, it's SpongeBob. Or not? Okay, hang on. We are going to fix this because it's fun. So it's external headphones. It should work. Maybe it's not loud enough. All right, never mind. Do you know what? We've all seen it so much, you can probably all hear it in your heads anyway. But yeah, a few moments later. Okay, I'll do it instead. But yeah, so a few moments later, you'll be met with a cluster. Is this a video or just a picture? There you go. So now you've got this cluster up and running. I can't remember what this video was. Yeah. So you've got your cluster up and running. Maybe you want some data. You might have data already, but maybe you don't. Maybe you just want to shove some data in so that you can see, if it works, test your connections, have a look at some examples, play around with it. And that's okay. We've got you covered. In here, it's a bit small, I apologize, but if you go to the 3 dots, once you've got it deployed, you can click Load Sample Dataset. The slides are available later, so you'll be able to watch this if you want. But yeah, you'll be able to go in and just say Load the Sample Dataset. So then, there you go, a bunch of data. And in true style, again, we have a few moments later. But it is, because it takes 2 to 3 minutes to do, and, we don't want to sit and watch something just load on the internet. So I was like, take a video and stick in some SpongeBob. But then we're met with this screen, with all these lines, and this is just some information like, read, write, input, outputs per second, or IOPS as it's called. But let's actually have a look. So if we go into the browser now, wrong window, there we go. So we have a cluster that already exists. Is it not? It should be. What's it doing? Is that better? Ooh. Oh. We have to do... Yay, lucky me. I need to... hang on. This is going to be fun then, isn't it? I might just duplicate displays a minute. See, I told you. Not been out enough to pray to demo gods. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's just mirror displays for now. There we go. So if we go back to here. There we go. Okay. Nice. There we go. Now you should be able to see it. So here we've got a bit of action going on. As I mentioned, you've got read, write, connections, input, outputs, data size. And this has got a bit more going on because this has actually got stuff in it. But if we want to start having a look at the data that we've got, we have a few options for doing it. So the first one is Data Explorer. So if you want to have a look at it right here in the browser, just click Browse Collections. Take straight to it. So we've got some existing ones here, but anything starting here with sample is from that sample data set that we saw being loaded in that video. So you've got all sorts of different types of data that are good for different things. So we've got sample data for like Airbnb. So there's a lot of fields in here, and I'll zoom in a bit, but you've got maybe not quite that much because it... yeah, but there you go. So there's a lot going on here, but again, you've got a lot going on there that you can do things with. You've got stuff like the name, a summary, maximum number of nights you can stay there, the number of beds, the type. There you go. You've got a pool, hot tub, and tennis. Nice. Sounds like quite a nice place to stay, actually. Waikiki, Hawaii, very nice. But yeah, so you've got ones like that, and then you've got like restaurants, and you can browse the restaurants, and that one might have different data. So this is smaller in terms of number of fields, but it's going to be a lot in there, and you can even like do queries right here in the browser if you want to. If you want to just do some information, so I don't know, cuisine, Irish. Close it off. Just apply it, and there you go. It's loaded everything that's Irish. It's super simple to just browse in the browser. But, maybe you don't want to do it in the browser. So there's other options as well. So if we go back to our databases list, and we're met with this screen again. Again, naming things is hard. I set up for cluster 0 as well. So if you do it, it's okay. But we can also click this connect button, and you'll be met with this screen. Well, the first time you do it, you'll be met with a screen about whether you want to restrict to just your IP address or any IP address, just a bit of security out of the box. But once you've done that, you can choose a connection method. And there's a few ways of doing it. So you can see here, connect with MongoDB Shell. So Mongo Shell is our command line tool. And, you can just click it and it will give you, depending on what your operating system is, it'll give you installation instructions or, depending on the version, it will then give you a connection string to type in. You just have to substitute the password. And that's great, so you can do it from command line if you want. But another one is you can connect from your application, which we'll see later on. And there's dozens of languages in this list. And these are just the officially supported ones. There's also loads of community ones as well. So you can get your connection string to connect easily. Or you can connect using Compass. So if I open Compass, which I forgot to open, that's all right. Compass is our GUI, graphical user interface tool. And we can zoom in. And we can connect to, is this one? I believe so. Is that one? No. It's all right. It's okay. I have it. Just give me the password. I'm just going to stop screen sharing a second because I'm going to enter a password. And let's be honest, it shouldn't be let's not be one of those people. So, it's deciding what it's doing. There we go. Okay. We safe? Maybe? No, we're okay. That's what you can see is the browser. I've got Compass open separately, but you can just click connect. So we can do a new connection. I think I'm just going to put in my password. Then I promise you'll be able to see what I can see. There we go. Back we go. Wonderful. So now we're connected. So we can see here exactly the same stuff we saw in the browser, but from a GUI. But what's cool is that there's stuff that you can do built into it to make your life easier. So we can, we can go in and we can see the number of documents, and we can do exactly the same. And we can do aggregations, which is like a bit like a factory. You add stages. It might be all go and get everything that's Irish cuisine, but then sort it by rating, and you can do some quite powerful things with it. But that could be a whole other talk in itself. But you can go through and you can do all sorts of different things with it, and it's all built in. But one of the things I like is down here in the bottom left, yeah, you can see it, is got the shell built in. So where we saw earlier that you can download the command line tools to do it from there, it's built into Compass as well. But one of the things I like with Compass is that it automatically connects you to it. You don't need the connection string because you're already connected to it in Compass. When you come down to the command line, there it is. You just get started, and you can anything that you could do with the command line, you could do here in the shell. So you can actually almost mix and match what you want to do. So you might start doing something in the GUI at the top, but then load the shell and do it from there. I think that's cool. And then another way of connecting, which is quite cool, which is in preview right now, but I still think it's cool, is we have a Visual Studio Code extension. Hopefully it's not too dark to see, but yeah, we've got a Visual Studio Code extension, so you can go into it. You can say, hey, connect to this cluster. It's the same one with the same data. But we even have this idea of playgrounds, and hopefully it's not too small. So we can say create a new playground. And it will actually give you some sample stuff you can play around. So it will show you how you can say what database to use. You can just drop everything. You can insert some data. You can start doing aggregations in it. So if you just want to play around without even leaving your code editor when you're, deep in flow, when you're really productive and you're bashing out code like you're in Hackers movie, you can just come into the playground and just play around if that's what you want to do. I said it's in preview at the moment, but I mean, let's be honest, quite a few things stay in preview for quite a while, even though they're pretty good. I really like playgrounds, and I just think it's fun, and it's a way to stay in the browser. Not the browser, your editor, sorry. So let's go back to unmirroring. Go back to here. So that's how you browse. But let's actually have a look at .NET with MongoDB. I'm sure if you're in this talk, quite a few of you are .NET developers, and you might be wondering, well, how easy is it to get started? The answer is NuGet package. It's probably quite difficult to see, so I apologize, but this is just a quick sample of the NuGet page. When I put this talk together a few months ago, because I've given it before, at the time of taking the picture, the MongoDB core driver had just short of 52 million downloads. So, it's not new. It's not something that people have gone, oh, yeah, maybe we'll try it. It's probably peaked at 52 million downloads now on NuGet, which isn't half bad. And the previous version, the MongoDB driver, I think it was, or the deprecated one, was at 50 million. So we're doing all right. So yeah, you can just download a driver and get started, which is pretty cool. But, well, let's have a look at an example. So we're going to have a look at a very simple web API with basic endpoints that call a database. And it'll look a bit like this. Don't worry, you're about to see it. That looks tiny. I just thought it was cool that you could impose a picture on a laptop on a slide. So let's just have a look quickly. So if we go into my terminal, which you can't see, but that's okay, we'll mirror it again. I'm so glad that Mac makes it easier to mirror and unmirror displays. So let's just get out of that. I'm not going to quit. There we go. And come into our terminal. So I use Hyper Terminal, which I really like. Just make this bigger. So this is here's what I prepared earlier. I'm already in the right directory for this example. But if we just do .NET run, it will go ahead and start this. We'll see how it's built in a minute, but I just want to show you what it is we're looking at. What's it doing? Oh, it's building, but there we go. So if we come into our browser, and we go to local host, there you go, 5001 Swagger index. We have Swagger endpoints. Nice. If you've ever done any back-end stuff with .NET before, you probably use Swagger. And so we have these endpoints defined, so we can go in and say, hey, get me, try it out. Tell me what games you've got already. Well, we've got Uno and Carcassonne. Family friendly and a little bit nerdy. Sounds like me. Unless I'm swearing, then it's a little less family friendly. But I like Uno. But so that's get, and then you can go in and you can even add a game if you want to. So you can copy the sample and we can try it out. Nope, I didn't mean to hit F12. Try it out. And then we can say, okay, well we can fill this out. So I don't know, Monopoly. Oh no, wrong one. We can leave that. That will auto generate. It should do. You watch me be wrong. Monopoly. We'll give it a price. Monopoly is far more expensive than it should be, so we'll say £24.99. And it is a board game. So we can just execute it. Now I'll go ahead. Ooh. Oh yeah, it doesn't like. Okay, fine, we'll give it an ID, whatever. I don't know. 42, the answer to life, universe, and everything. You don't always have to. So what normally happens if you're not doing it in Swagger is it would auto-generate you like a GUID for the ID, but this is just Swagger being Swagger. But there we go. Oh, go away. Okay, it does work. Trust me on this. I told you, not enough sacrifices to the demo gods. But as you'll see later on in the resources I share afterwards, I actually wrote a tutorial on mongodb.com on how to create this, so you can go through it yourself and you'll see it does work, I promise.
I think it works if you remove the ID properly.
That's true. It might just. I think it might be a required field. It might. Oh no, there you go. You were right. See, this is why I love giving talks, because even the audience can teach you a thing or two. But if we go back and just get the games again, there it is, Monopoly. Oh, we did have Monopoly, I just didn't scroll. But anyway, it's fine. I think we've probably all owned too many copies of board games over the years, and someone goes, oh, I didn't know you have this. Here, have it again. But yeah, so there's, it's all the other endpoints you can update and you delete, but just for time reasons, we won't go through all of them. But, you can recreate this yourself and play around to your heart's content. So, that's kind of the endpoints, and we've got the API there, so you could access it from any other language project. As long as you can talk to it and get to this URL, you can use these endpoints to fetch information. So how is this put together? Well, if we unmirror again, I probably could just leave it mirrored, but let's not risk the wrath of the demo gods. So. Is that right? Yeah, so we'll start off with a game model. So it's just like you would have done in relational databases where you maybe have object relational mappers and all of that. You've got a class. We'll just call it game. It has an ID property, but we just give it some very MongoDB specific attributes here. So we're saying this is the BSON ID, and we're saying it's a representation of the object ID. So if you remember, I mentioned when we first saw the underscore ID in our worked example, that is, that kind of random GUID it generates for you is actually stored as an object ID. So that's what we're doing here. It takes care of converting it for you. You just treat it as a string. Then we have name, price, and category. Pretty straightforward. Just a simple model. Then we have the constructor, and we have we have a service, and then we have a constructor. So in here, we just create a new client. Like in any ASP.NET Core Web API project or any kind of web project in .NET Core ASP, you've got the settings, and you can save your connection string somewhere private in the settings and bring it in. So we initiate the client. We go and fetch the database that we care about. In this case, the games database. And then we just go ahead and say, right, well, this is a database. Go and fetch me the collection inside that database, because a database can hold multiple collections. They're differentiated by name. So this is the collection that we want. There you go. You've already got access to your data in 3 lines of code. Not bad. And then we've got the usual endpoint. So, you've got CRUD, create, read, update, delete. Well, create simple. You call it. You create at some point, normally at the point that you're creating it from the UI maybe, or from the endpoint. You create that game object, you pass it into this create method, and it just inserts the game. You can return the game if you want to. You don't have to, but it's inserted the game for you. You can read all at once. using one line and some link. Just give me a list of games returned, and then just call the games client that we created, find the games, and in this find you'll see this game to true argument. This is just, you can filter basically when you do the find, and because we want everything back, we're just saying true, just give us everything. And then we convert it to a list. And then we get a list of everything back from our database mapped to that game model, so we can start using it. You can also read one specifically, so you can just pass in the ID string. Just rather than saying give us everything, just pass it the game and just say get us it where the game ID matches the ID. And just return the first one of those. You never know. You know what data retrieval's like. Sometimes you just return more than one. So just bring us back first or default. Bring me something or don't blow up. Thank you. Then you've got update. Now, I apologize for the size of this one. When you try and make it a little bit bigger, it goes off the edge of the slide, so it had to be a little bit smaller. But you've got this, this ID string that you pass in, and then the game, and it's just saying replace the game with this ID that already exists in the data with this new document instead. Straightforward. And then when it, like with all of these, there's multiple ways of doing things. So for delete, I decided to show you that you can do it in two ways. The first way is by object. You just pass in the object, and just like with the find, you just say delete one, but where the ID matches this ID. And you can also pass an ID. Great. Again, like 1-2 lines of code, and you're doing all these CRUD endpoints. And that's cool, but that's just a web API. What if we want to do something a little bit more interesting with the front end? So let's have a look at a .NET Core MVC example. And this is actually using the mflix sample data that you might have seen from the data we imported. So it's like an IMDb clone essentially that just has information about films, like a title, an image, maybe Rotten Tomatoes ratings and some other things. So let's just have and you can see it here again, but let's just have a quick look at what that looks like. So let's kill that off because it's unhappy with me anyway. And we'll come into here. So this can be .NET Run. Oh, thanks. There we go. It's alright, you didn't miss much. It's .NET Run. But there we go. So the application started, nice and simple. And we can just go back to here. But it's 5,000 because it's not secure. I know. Make your website secure. It's 2021. But there we go. So we've got this sample, and it's pretty clever. You saw earlier about how if your schema can be flexible, you maybe don't have an image for a film for whatever reason, and that doesn't matter. This film's from 1922. Probably wasn't quite so easy to come by a film poster in those days. But rather than going, oh, we don't have an image, we can't do anything with this like you'd happen in relational databases, it just handle it. Okay, there isn't an image. But there's things going on in here, and you can search. I don't know, Harry Potter. Why not? I rewatched all 8 of them recently, so why not? But yeah, you can do a search, and you can log in if you want, and you can click into one and get more information. You get a description, the director, the runtime, all sorts of information, and that's pretty cool. But yeah, that's all running again against MongoDB Atlas. You just got a cluster running with all this information, and it's running for free. And you've got an mflix clone if you want it. But what's even better about this, and I'm just going to unmirror again, come into my slides. There we go. But what's even better is that if you want to see how this was made, you can. Because we have something called MongoDB University. If you're a .NET developer, you might have heard of Microsoft Learn. They're purely online learning platform where you can, watch videos, do interactive exercises, and all that. That's what MongoDB University is as well. It's free of charge. You can go on, you can take courses. There's learning paths. If you're that kind of person, you can even take certifications. And there's all sorts of stuff on there. And it just, as it says here, build better, faster applications by learning with University for free. There's loads of stuff on there. But I actually built that. Some of it gave you a starter template, I won't lie, but that mflix sample that you saw there was built from a university class. So if you thought that was kind of cool, you just go and take the class for free yourself and create the same application. And I love that. But then another product I want to talk to you about is Realm. Now, anyone that's watched me talk before or knows me outside the speaker circuit knows that I am a very passionate Xamarin developer. Mobile apps tends to be what I do in my spare time. Technically, I'm a Microsoft MVP for developer technologies, but you might as well just put brackets Xamarin around that, because that's the majority of my life. And so when it comes to mobile and stuff, mobile database is important to me. And that's what Realm is. So Realm, it does a little bit more than just mobile, but we'll just start at the basics, which is Realm Mobile is a kind of edge to cloud database, mobile database service, essentially. But what's really clever is it can come with Realm Sync out of the box. So you don't have to worry about whether the phone or whatever tablet is online or offline. It keeps a local copy of the database on the device and takes care of syncing it to the cloud. So you'll always have the access to the data. None of this, try and load Twitter and it's like just has a loading, and or Facebook or whatever takes your fancy, Netflix, whatever. It doesn't matter. The data will be there on your phone. Maybe don't suggest trying to store the Netflix catalog on a mobile. We're back. There we go. A few moments later. There we go. Okay, so crisis averted. See, no one's prayed enough to the demo gods today, apparently. So yeah, so as I was saying, you got all offline sync taken care of, and so as you can see from this diagram, you've got the databases on your mobile platform of choice. It connects to your Atlas cluster. So if you've got an existing database already in Atlas, you don't need to create a second copy of it just to introduce mobile as a project type for application. Just point it to the same cluster, same data, carry on. But what I like about Realm is it's more than just Realm Mobile. It's also an application development service. You can do authentication. We've got sync that I mentioned. Functions. So, just like you've got, say, Azure Functions serverless, you can do functions in Realm. In fact, I've got a function that I wrote recently that's got an incoming webhook attached to it that then can be called from a Slack bot, which just gets the weather for my team. So since I started in June, we found that every morning we tend to put like a morning message to each other, and then we put an emote of what the weather is where we are. So I was like, yeah, we can automate this. So now I've got a function which calls the Open Weather API for each of the team members, and then just returns it in an, I'd say, nice format. Not quite true right now. It's in JSON format that's not very neat, but I've got plenty of time. But yeah, we've got a function, so it's really easy to do. We've got triggers, so you can do things like, when someone, maybe when someone adds an entry to your database or a specific collection, text somebody with Twilio if you like. Why not? And then you've got data access rules and schemas. You've got a flexible schema, but if you do, that does scare you a little bit, and you've decided, oh, I know what this should look like. You can go ahead and actually say, I want a schema. I recently did a Twitch stream which I can tweet afterwards. My Twitter handle is in the bottom left. Feel free to follow me, message me anytime. And I can tweet about it afterwards. I did a Twitch stream all about schema validation. So I have on the MongoDB Twitch channel, I have a series called Learning with Luce, where roughly monthly, but not always, I have a guest on who will teach me something. And so recently I had a guest on to teach me all about schema validation. So if you decide, hey, I do want a schema actually, and I know what my data should look like and what fields should be there and what shouldn't, you can put one in. And so that's pretty powerful. I like to think of well, it's not so much like to think. We like to think of Atlas less as a database, but more of a database, like a data application service. Like there's so much you can do beyond just store data. And then let's just quickly have a look at Realm in action. So you can actually just go ahead and we can follow a tutorial. So this task tracker app I'm about to show you was created using the Realm Getting Started tutorial on the website. So again, if you want to create the same thing, that's okay. You can go ahead and follow it. So it's just mirror displays again. Plus I love a good mobile app. It's going to start. So you just need me to, there we go. Click Apple logo. It should be a case of here's what I prepared earlier, so we can just run the app. But it's a clever app. It already has, if you follow the tutorial, then you get the companion repository to get started with it from GitHub. You'll have authentication built in, so you can see how to do it. You can, you can have different projects and different tasks. It's pretty cool. Here we go. So here it is. If it loads. Unfortunately, I don't think you can make a simulator any bigger. The color scheme is awful. I actually Twitch streamed following this project for the first time, and I'd live on stream change the colors. I couldn't permanently change it, but for the version I wrote at the time, I changed it because you can't see the names. But you can go into a project and you can add a task like give a great talk at NDC Oslo, and you can change the status of it. So there you go. I want to change it from open to hopefully in progress, and hopefully within the next 10 minutes you'll agree that it's gone from in progress to done, but we'll see. But yeah, that's all using Realm. So it's using an Atlas cluster that you've already seen. So you could actually go ahead and maybe create a desktop app version of this or a website version that uses the same data. And when you pull that all in, it'll all be the consistent between them, and it will know the status of everything, which is super cool. And as someone whose favorite technology is a cross-platform technology, if you can do it once and use it multiple places, I'm sold. So that's the app. So if we just go into mirroring again. No, don't mirror, even. Nope. Right, there we go. Let's just get rid of that stupid box. You can come over here. There we go. So that was a task tracker app. And, it was created from the tutorial, and you got a much better view of it than a silly picture. So let's just kind of round this fun journey together off with just having a look at it in action a little bit. So just, a little bit of how kind of places it's been used or fun things you can do with it if you just use your imagination. So this is a shooter game created in Unity by my colleague Nick, which uses Realm on the back end. And that Realm, it saves your score and your high score. So, you can have persistence between sessions thanks to Realm. And it's Unity, you can just go and pew things if you like shooting things with lasers and play this game. Now, I love this one. You might recognize that face in the bottom left. That would be me. Because this game is a Unity game that's currently at our booth at AWS reInvent happening in Las Vegas right now. So this is using Atlas, and and it's a really amazing, beautiful game, but it's got me and my colleagues in it. I didn't come up with my quote in this game, so I don't know why my character's talking about chain streams, but chain streams are fast, it's true. But yeah, this is a game, it's a game using MongoDB. It doesn't have to be, really boring enterprise samples. You can do fun things with it if you want to. Data's data. Have some fun. But let's just quickly have a look at some other examples. Because, I just want to give you a chance to have a quick look and make sure that we have some time for questions at the end. So if we go into the browser, there we go. So just a couple of examples here. So don't worry too much about the video. So I'll just zoom out a bit. So DWP or see, this is why I'm glad Cliff's here, because he tells me when I do it wrong. Right, there we go. Okay, so DWP. So there we go. Okay, so DWP or Department for Work and Pensions is the UK's government department for social care and benefits. So those on low income or disability or whatever, if they need some help from the government, the Department for Work and Pensions is who takes care of them, in theory. But we're not going to talk about politics right now. And what happened was that, yeah, so universal credit is what we call, most people these days in the UK, when you get put on benefits, you get put on what's called universal credit. So the idea is they don't say, this is for this, this is for this, this is for that. You just get a blank universal payment that's supposed to cover everything that you're supposed to do. And I said emphasis on supposed to, but again, no bad Luce, no politics. But yeah, so what happened was, MongoDB is underpinning Department for Work and Pensions, and when the pandemic hit, you can imagine a lot of people sadly lost their jobs or got put on furlough and things, and they just needed some extra help. So, like, the demand for universal credit was tenfold. Like 10 times more people suddenly needed this help and services than they did previously. But thanks to the ability to scale horizontally and vertically, it was fine. No problem. MongoDB just handled it, and people could carry on getting the universal credit. Now, I've heard stories, so I know it might not have been that quick, but it wasn't because of us. That was just because politics. But it was great. We could just scale it to handle it. So a really key, like, real-world case where people are relying on this money to pay their bills, feed their families, heat the house, stay alive, look after their cute pets. All that stuff handled, and MongoDB could just scale to handle it. Another one I like is don't worry too much about the size of this text here and what it says. You can read these later if you're interested. But as someone who was a graduate at a Japanese IT firm, lean or agile, devs know it as agile, but lean, as I knew it, was drummed into us. We even had to take like 2-day courses on lean. And lean came out of Toyota. So this use case here or customer story about Toyota I like. So they've got big factories and they've got forklifts and things going on, and they wanted to automate it, and have all these like robots essentially going around doing all the forklifting, and underpinning that as well as Azure and other things. But they created a smart factory by moving away from monolith repos into microservices, and one of the things they were using was MongoDB. So literally, there's like a little robot forklift like running around like some kind of kids program, like just call them Bob the Builder. They were just there thanks to MongoDB under the hood, and I just like that because, as I said, as someone who had lean drummed into them for 2 years, this idea of like improvement by automating and making things as easy as possible, I was like, that's kind of cool. But come on, that's cars and factories and forklifts and benefits, boring. Let's talk about video games. So you might know, most people I'm sure have heard of Sega and have played Sonic. Sega Hardlight is their mobile game studio. So, Crazy Taxi and the Sonic mobile game, all of those come out of the Sega Hardlight studio. And back in 2018, they migrated to MongoDB Atlas. So if you've ever played any of those games on your mobile phone, all the data that it remembers about you and your scores and the things that your profile and things that it remembers between your sessions comes out of MongoDB, which I think is pretty cool. It's amazing to think that there's this stuff going on, and there are other examples. No idea why, but I'm not allowed to name names. But just take it from me, some very big game companies do use us under the hood, and not had any horror stories yet of things going wrong with online games. So, it's pretty good. And I just like the breadth of things you can do with it, whether it's, handling benefit systems or forklift trucks or games or, whatever. It's data, and you can use it from different languages. It doesn't have to be .NET. You can just do it from wherever you want. And I love that. I love that for all of us. Anything that's going to make our lives easier, I'm sold. So, here we go. So, just to summarize what we've talked about. So we've seen what document databases are, and I apologize for the font size. Trying to fit so many things in a slide gets difficult, but you've got what document databases are, the terms that are different between them. We saw that really great table from my colleague with the differences between them. Then you've got what MongoDB is, including Atlas and Realm, but we have loads of other cool products as well. Like, I didn't have time to show you today, but we've got things like charts. So charts, you can point at your existing data clusters and create amazing visuals from it. So you could have a pie chart or a line graph or a bar chart or a combo chart, whatever you want. Just point at your data and just drag and drop some fields in, and it will make pretty graphs for you. Of course, we saw Realm as well and the different things it can do. And then we just, we learned about the package as a whole and the different things you can do and the way you can combine it. And then my favorite, MongoDB University, which is free. Free is our favorite word. I'm sure many of you have walked around the expo hall outside and grabbed as much free swag as you can get your hands on. We like free. And then we saw some pretty cool examples. And, and I like that. I think it's always important to go, well, we can talk about it in theory, but what's some cool stuff going on? So there we go. Our whistle-stop tour has ended. You can either, if you want the slides and the links that I've looked at and showed you and talked about and the university course to build mflix yourself and all of that, you can either scan that QR code or you can visit that link. It's 2021. I thought I'd give you all a QR code because why not? As I mentioned, you can find me on Twitter as @LuceCarter1. Feel free to drop me a follow. In fact, shameless plug, I've actually just started writing a book on MongoDB Atlas and .NET. So, if you are interested in the book, feel free to follow me on Twitter where I'll share regular updates. And hopefully, by this time next year, it should be published. Touch wood. But yeah, so thank you. I'm not sure if we've got time for questions. I think the microphone issues didn't help. But, I'm happy to take questions on the way out if people want to. But have a great conference, everyone, and thank you for attending.